Hello again and welcome to our Monday, Thursday evening vigil, where we begin a new journey, a journey with Jesus and his disciples to an upper room. But first, before we join him in that upper room, let us just be still and ask ourselves a poignant question. Why am I here? Of all the things that I could be doing this night, watching television, going to the cinema, maybe having a takeaway with family, or going into the city. So why are you here? What is it that guides you, your heart, to be here on this Monday, Thursday evening? For some of our brothers and sisters, today is Good Friday in New Zealand. But for those of us here in Europe and in the West, it's still Monday, Thursday. So I would like us to begin by lighting a candle. By lighting a candle in recognition of what a loving God did for the children of God. And I wonder how God is feeling when he allowed his only son, Jesus, to undergo the most horrendous torture so that the children of God could be free. And yet, when you look around you and you see how mankind are responding to God, many don't even know him. And of the many who don't know him, a large number, I guess, just find the whole thing rather boring and dull. It's not challenging. But for the few, we are here. And this light is to commemorate those who are celebrating with Jesus and his early disciples his heroic sacrifice in love. So I dedicate this light to those who are here and who are at this moment in their various churches around the world, and for those who are indifferent, because we are all equal and all loved the same by God. So we reflect on the meaning of Maundy, Thursday. It is part of the Easter Triduum, Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday. And our first reflection this evening is an extract particularly suitable tonight when we recall the institution of the Last Supper. For the Eucharist to be fulfilled, the consecrated elements must be broken and shared in communion. Our consecration means nothing if it is kept to ourselves. Consecration is always for some purpose. It is not an end in itself. A church is consecrated for worship. A pilgrim is consecrated for his or her journey towards God, like in our community, when a member becomes an oblate or a novice monastic, we have a ceremony, informal, where they're officially received into the community. And at the end of their training, they willingly and voluntarily agree to enter a contract with God to be renewed every year for 5 years of their sevenfold promises. And as a pilgrim in service to God, that contract is witnessed by the community. We are consecrated for God and for each other, not for ourselves alone. Let's just think for a moment about what happens when, for example, we consecrate a church. It seems to me that we do two things. One, we declare our desire and intention that this particular place, this building, shall be a place of worship and a sacred space where God shall be at home. And secondly, when we use that space for the purpose for which it has been consecrated, and in using it we continue and fulfill the process of its sanctification. It seems to me that God does the same thing for us when he consecrates us. He declares his desire and intention that we shall be consecrated to his truth, and that our lives shall become a space where he can be at home. He then lives in our lives, fulfilling in them the purpose for which he has created them and consecrated them. And like the Eucharistic bread, we are consecrated in order to be broken and given to others. As monastics in the Teo community, our lives are consecrated to God, not to ego and not to self. We surrender our heart and our life to God, and with God's help, to give what we have of ourselves totally for unity and global peace within the whole family of God. We can't share in the consecration that was first enacted during the Last Supper and is reenacted in every Eucharist unless we are willing to become part of the sacrifice. Of course, it is easy to say with our lips that we are offering our sufferings as part of Christ's sacrifice, and it is easy to believe it in our heads. It becomes a problem when we try to take hold of it on our hearts, because when it reaches our hearts, it takes on a life of its own that rapidly passes beyond our conscious control. Can you remember any moments in your journey with God when you felt that you were being consecrated by him for a particular ministry or role in life? You may perhaps remember your confirmation, or a time of spiritual renewal, or the growing awareness of a vocation, or the moments may have been very private. In times of prayer, in times of meditation alone with Christ, recall them now before God. If you feel drawn to do so, perhaps renew the promises you made to God at those times, and ask him now to bless your continuing intention to follow him in those special ways. Let us be still. Let us be still and reflect on our gift of ourself to God. Many people feel that to become a monastic and consecrate your life to God means you're giving up all the things of the world. The emphasis meaning or giving up. God doesn't want us to give up anything. God wants us to be happy and free. And all we're asked to do is surrender our heart. And the moment we surrender our heart to God, we experience a new way of living that is contrary to the materialistic world wherein lives a society that has lost its sense of purpose. You and I are here to commemorate an event that happened 2,000 years ago. And it is as real today, tonight, as it was then. It is for me. And I'd like to lead you to join Jesus in that upper room. But first, we need a bit of background. And taking the New Testament of the Christian Bible, we read in Mark 14, verse 12 onwards. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the day the lambs for the Passover meal were killed, Jesus' disciples asked him, "Where do you want us to go and get the Passover meal ready for you?" Then Jesus sent two of them with these instructions. "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house he enters, and say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher says, where is the room where my disciples and I will eat the Passover meal?' Then he will show you a large upstairs room prepared and furnished, where you will get everything ready for us." The disciples left and went to the city, and found everything just as Jesus had told them. And they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, Jesus came with the 12 disciples, and while they were at the table eating, Jesus said, "I tell you that one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." The disciples were upset and began to ask him one after the other, "Surely you don't mean me, do you?" And Jesus answered, "It will be one of you 12, one who dips his bread in the dish with me. The Son of Man will die, as the scriptures say he will. But how terrible for that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would have been better for that man if he had never been born." I would like you to imagine that you are walking along a very tight, narrow lane in Jerusalem. It is so narrow that when you're passing someone, you can almost feel them touching you. And you see Peter, James, and John with their cloaks over their head so as not to be recognized, to raise suspicion. And you follow them. And you enter this house, and you notice that there are stairs, and you climb the stairs. And you come into a large room that's divided into two segments. The first part, there are lots of chairs. There's a large bowl with a pitcher of water and fresh towels. And the other part of the room is elevated with a rather long table. And you notice the disciples have been asked to sit together as the followers of Jesus. And there is an empty place there. And that empty place is for you to sit and to have your feet washed by Jesus. And as you sit quietly, the atmosphere is solemn. There is a sense of the unexpected. You could hear a pin drop. And your mind is drawn to the table with the water and towels, and you're wondering, is that for our hands? Have we to wash our hands? Which is customary in these parts. And then you hear the door open again, and you hear footsteps coming up the stairs. And suddenly Jesus appears. He appears and he greets each one with a smile. And he comes to Peter and he says, Peter, I want to wash your feet. And Peter remonstrated, being a type A personality, but eventually he allowed the master kneel before him and wash his feet. And so it was that Jesus went along all of the 12 apostles and washed each one's feet and dried them with the towel. And now Jesus is kneeling before you. He's kneeling before you, and he looks up at you and he smiles. And you're apprehensive. Why is he washing my feet? And the Spirit of God speaks to your heart so that you can partake in the Eucharist with the Master. And you feel the Master bathing your feet in the fresh spring water. And it's soothing, it's restorative, and it's extremely humbling. He now dries your feet and slips on your sandals. And as he leaves you, he smiles. And there is a silence now. There is a peaceful presence about this humbling act of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. And he says to each one of you, you too are called to wash the feet of the servants of God. For he who wants to be great shall become least, and he who is least will be made great. And in the scriptures, we're told that the 12 disciples, apostles, sat with Jesus at this long table. But there is a chair brought directly opposite Jesus. Only one chair. And that chair is for you to sit and observe. And as you look to your right, you see 6 of the apostles, and to the left, you see the other 6 and Magdalena. And then Jesus takes the bread, gave a prayer of thanks and broke it, and gave it to you and to his disciples. And he said, take it and eat it. This is my body. And the piece of bread that you're holding in your hand is miraculously transformed into the body of Jesus. And your hands are tingling. And a reverence comes over you. And you take the consecrated bread and you eat it. And as you look up, you see that Jesus has taken the cup filled with the wine, and he says this prayer. He gave thanks to God and handed it to all of them and to you, and gave thanks to his Father, Mother God. But he said, this is my blood, which is poured out for many, my blood which seals God's covenant. And I tell you, I will never again drink this wine until the day I drink the new wine in the kingdom of my Father, Mother God. And you take the cup from Jesus' hand and you drink the wine that's been sanctified and consecrated, and now it becomes the blood of Christ. And it fills you with reverence and peace. There is a silence. And then they sang a hymn. They embraced one another in love. And they gave thanks to Jesus. And now they follow Jesus to the Mount of Olives. And they covered their heads with their cloaks so as not to be identified as followers of Jesus. How weak they were, even though they'd received his body and blood as you did. But you follow him. You're right next to him. And you go with him to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, all of you will run away and leave me, for the scripture says, God will kill the shepherd, and the sheep will all be scattered. But after I am raised to life, I will go to Galilee ahead of you. And Peter, being Peter, answered, I will never leave you, even though all the rest do. And Jesus said to Peter, Peter, I tell you that before the cock crows twice tonight, you will say 3 times that you do not know me. And you witness this. And Peter is perturbed, perplexed, and shocked. And Peter answered even more strongly, I will never say that, even if I have to die with you. And all the other disciples said the same. And eventually they came to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John with him, and distress and anguish came over them, and he said to them, the sorrow in my heart is so great that it almost crushes me. Stay here and keep watch. And Jesus went a little further on, threw himself on the ground, and prayed that if possible, he might not have to go through this, a time of great suffering and anguish. And Jesus prayed, Father, take this cup of suffering from me, yet not what I will, but what thou wilt be done. And you follow Jesus. You follow Jesus alone, where the others had fallen asleep. And you kneel beside him, and you see the torment, the anguish, and you notice the sweat on his brow, his bleeding fresh blood. And you stand up and you go to him and you hold Jesus in your arms and you say, Lord, I am here. I will never leave you. I will be here with you because you gave your life for me. The least I can do now is to be there for you. And the moon was bright that night, and you could see as clear in the Garden of Gethsemane as you could in noonday light. And there was a silence in that garden. And what you could hear was the tears from Jesus. He cried bitter tears. He cried tears for you and me, and for this generation of a godless society that have turned their back on him. But you haven't. You are here. So let us stay here with the Lord and give thanks. And we come now to the closing prayer of our time together. Father, Mother God, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me. And all your creatures, I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with the love of my heart, for I love you, Lord. I need to give you myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve, and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father, Mother God. And that prayer was composed by Charles de Foucault, who lived from 1858 to 1916. A rather beautiful prayer to end our Maundy Thursday vigil. And if you choose to read the scriptures for reflection, you may wish to read St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 22, verses 7 to 20. And the theme of the reading, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you. And now I wish you a peace-filled night as we go into the Garden of Gethsemane with the Lord. And we spend time now alone in prayer with the Beloved. I wish you peace. And God bless you. And I hope to see you same time tomorrow for our Good Friday Vigil of Peace. Namaste. Shalom. Inshallah paxit bonum om shanti. Solo di caritas. Salam alaikum. And may the peace of the Christ touch your heart this night and fill you with hope. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember